she's trying to learn French. So, le BIEC aimerait vous introduire à Archie et Pierrette Martin. Archie est natif du Escoumounac, du Nouveau-Brunswick, né d'un père métis et d'une mère indienne Mi'kmaq. Archie est de 4e génération Mi'kmaq et d'une grande lignée de métis de l'Est du Canada. Pierrette est métisse du Québec. J'aimerais prendre connaissance qu'ici à Clarence Rockland, nous sommes situés sur les terres traditionnelles et ancestrales des nations Anishinaabe et de Haudenosaunee. La Bibliothèque publique de Clarence Rockland est reconnaissante envers ces nations autochtones pour la garde qu'elle exerce sur ces terres. Nous honorons les peuples et les terres des nations Anishinaabe et Haudenosaunee. Leur culture, leur présence ont nourri et continuent de nourrir cette terre. Donc, merci d'être ici aujourd'hui. Puis, have fun with the presentation. It's very educational. And if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to stop and let them know. Okay? All yours, Archie.
Okay, quickly, Lipton, Nipta. I'm happy to be here. Not too many people, but just the same. You don't have to have many people to be able to discuss a topic like treaties. I'm very happy to be here. Like Robin was saying, I'm from the Maritimes. I'm from part of the Southern Territories, the Mi'kmaq people. And I'm here with my wife, Pierrette. She's from Quebec. She's a Métis from Quebec. And she's my partner now for many, many years.
How many, Archie?
How
many?
So you can, did you can ask questions instead of forgetting it. You can stop me anytime. I have my friend here to kiss me. I know where to start it back after I answer the question. There's no problem. For the camera also, you can interrupt me anytime, ask me questions, and it'll be a pleasure to answer them. We'll make it very casually and try to explain to you as much as my knowledge as a knowledge keeper. I try to bring you all the knowledge I can. If I don't have the knowledge, I can find people that do have the knowledge, and I will bring the knowledge to you with pleasure through email or through Robin can advise me, no problem. So we're going to start about the treaties. It's not a Canadian product. It was not invented in the Americas. Treaties were something that was used in Europe, more in Europe, for different problems that they had, because the wars in Europe were between the French, the British, Spain, but we had another player we don't talk too much about, was the Dutch, okay, Netherlands. They were very much involved in a lot of things that you see as we go through the treaties. The Dutch were, there were people that very businesslike and very aggressive when it came to be able to trade and to be able to make alliance with different government people. Okay, now we have to start really with Champlain. When Champlain came to the Americas, he met on the Tadoussac, on the Saguenay River and the St. Lawrence River at Tadoussac at Baie Sainte Catherine. He met the Anishinaabes, which are Algonquins, and also he met with the Montagnais. And the question he did ask the natives at that time, is it okay for our men to marry your woman? That's a big start. They said yes. So the marriages that were conceived at that time were called the marriage country wives. Okay? En français, c'était se marier à la façon du pays, ou les filles du pays. The men were in the average of in their 20s, some in their 30s, would marry First Nation girls around between 9 and 12. Okay? That was the age at that time. So for sure, it was quite different And they could not bring women from Europe because it was way too harsh, and the conditions here were way too harsh. And they had to really learn how to live as a First Nation in a very harsh country, and that's why Jacques Cartier, he never wanted to colonize the Americas whatsoever. So the first thing they brought, the first priests they brought were the Recollets, the Franciscans, which then they didn't do a very good job. They did a good job, but they weren't tough enough. They weren't harsh enough. They needed more thumpers, somebody to get the message across. So they replaced the Recollets with the Franciscans with the Black Robes, which were the Black Robes Jesuits. They were very tough. So Jesse Flesh, he made friends with the great chief, Mi'kmaq chief at that time, was called Marbetou. And Marbetou, he was invited to come to France to meet the French because they wanted to colonize the Americas through the east, because Newfoundland and Cape Breton are the 2 points of land that you see the first as you come in from Europe. So Marbetou decided, Marbetou had a long beard, okay? Mi'kmaq, we have beards, and very cold, so we need hair for our face, okay? The women, well, we made them longer capuchon, or a little more, like the Inuits. They didn't have facial hair, men all had facial hair. Because we're all people that come from Europe or come from Asia, so we're all immigrants at different dates. But we call ourselves First Nation, we're the first here. So sometimes when you're first at the table, it doesn't mean you're going to eat first, but it's part of our culture that anybody that comes to live in the Americas are immigrants like us. We're immigrants also. So for sure, when Marbetou got there, he seen the French, and he was not very impressed by the way they lived. They weren't very clean, they smelled bad. Their clothes was all in rags. So he said, I don't want them to come to the Americas. I don't want those people. So Jesse Flesh said, whoa, wait, we'll fix that with the king. So they scrubbed them good it took them a week, take them nice and clean there, wash them up there, and fix them up, nice clothes, with a little hat with a feather, and come to Versailles, and they fed them cake, and they said, oh, those are okay, we're going to invite those. When he said to the Jesuit, to Jesse Flesh, any priest that comes, we take the Catholic faith, the Jesuit or the priest will do their ceremony in the Mi'kmaq language. They're harsh negotiators too. It's not like they said in our history that we're like pushovers. We're not pushovers. They knew what they were doing. Now, when this all happened, they decided, and they said to Marbetou, we have somebody that wants to meet you. You know who he met? He met the Pope in Rome.
Really?
By meeting the Pope, he signed the Concordat of 1610. He established the colony in 1604, 1610. The first treaty that was signed in the Americas were signed with the Pope, with Marbetou, and it was called the Concordat of the Spirituality of the Mi'kmaq people. Now, I'll just read you what is said in the Concordat, very short in English. Entering into the Concordat was very important for the Mi'kmaq people. European countries could do business only with Catholic states. They didn't want to deal with unbelievers. Confident. So it was a good opportunity for Europe, and it was a good for us, because it was entered into by due process of law. The Concordat was the legal way to get the furs. Okay? It recognized us as a Catholic state, okay, as a nation under God. That's the Concordat. And it was signed by the Pope. But as you see here, I'll just show you, the Concordat is signed like a piece of paper here you see on the Bretta. They didn't want that. So Martin said, yes, we agree, you can baptize me, you can baptize my people, but we're going to make a wampum belt. The wampum is a little bead made from quahogs and made from the bourgeois, another type of shellfish from the Maritimes. And they made the belt, and in the belt they put all pictograms, little images like Egyptian. And from there, you cannot erase them, you cannot change them, you cannot move them. It is there forever and ever and ever. And we took the wampum belt and we gave it to the priest. It's still in Rome. They have it locked up in the safe there. The Mi'kmaq people want to have it back, but it's very hard if you give something to another nation to, after that, ask for it. But it's really nice having that.
But were they really converted to Catholicism at that point? Like, were the people really believing in Christ and the Pope and everything? Like, the priests were able to convince everybody?
But they had their beliefs. It was not necessarily that they believe everything that Jesse Flesh told them about Christianity.
Okay.
Because they had their own belief. If you ever go to Cape Breton, you have a very big statue of Marbitou. Not Marbitou, it's what's the name? I forgot. Glooskap, excuse me. You have in our belief, we don't believe in hell, and we believe in Glooskap. Glooskap is a creator of all things. And Glooskap, if you go to Nova Scotia, when you come in, you see the big statue of Glooskap. And he, there's a big story. I won't say the whole story because it would be here too long. But the spirituality, he invented the animals first. They're very large. And the animal roamed the earth. There was no humans. But he decided to make the humans into his image. Okay? By making these humans to his image, he had the animal help him to create the humans, which is another story with little dogs. That's how they explain it. And they have only 3 races left on earth. It's called, you have the red, the white, the black, and the yellow. The only races left is, the yellow is the Asiatic, the black is Africans, the white is Europeans, and the red is the First Nation. But it covers not just Canada, right up the Maya, the Inca, everything. These are called the Red Nation, okay? And each one has to protect its land. They are not the owner of the land, they belong to the land. We don't own the land. And the reason why I think Glooskap wanted that, because it's easier for me to share something I don't own. It's a little harder when you own, you got yourself a nice Cadillac. Are you going to share it? No, don't touch my car. So the ownership is very bad, okay? And sometimes what happens is that when you own something, you want to own more and more and more and more. It becomes riches, okay? And that's all you do, you're hurting people, And so the First Nation, they didn't want to do that. The Mi'kmaq didn't want to do that. So for sure, the next treaty I'm going to talk about is the Treaty of Bretta. The Treaty of Bretta, okay, was very important for the Dutch. For them, I'll just read a little part of their, what they did. The colony of the Netherlands was established by the Dutch West India. There was a company they had that was dealing with that, but they were working on something very special. in 1624, and it grew to encompass the present day of New York. Present day of New York at that time, when the Dutch, was called New Amsterdam. Okay, it belonged to the Dutch. Manhattan, they took the island for what I believe, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 gallons of whiskey. The chiefs did Manhattan at that time, and they encompassed and they took the 6 boroughs belonged to the Dutch. So, and also they went further than that. They had New York, they took over Connecticut, New Jersey. Successful Dutch settlement in the colony grew up to the southern part we call the New Amsterdam. And also, when I'm going to switch to the next treaty, is this one, the Treaty of Utrecht. This one really hurt us because they divided all our lands. They sat, Utrecht was in Holland again, divided all our lands, no representative of the First Nation, no Métis sat at the table, and there were no Acadians sat at the table. There was France, British, Spanish, Dutch, and Denmark. And they divided all the land. But at the same time, they had an idea that nobody understood, especially us here in the Americas. They did the same to Africa. So they started dividing all the land in Africa, and what happened? Well, I'll just let you know what happened. Independent people were being arrogated, and First Nation and African lands were also being taken. Okay? The Treaty of Utrecht also gave, this is very important, European nations license to forcibly remove black people from Africa and bring them to the Americas as slaves. Voila. So New Amsterdam became the door for the slave trade. Okay? Right there. Now, the Treaty of Utrecht, the Acadians didn't know what was going on. The First Nation didn't know. Nobody knew what was going on. Everything was done through these people in Europe. Nothing was done in the Americas. Okay? Now, Treaty of Paris. It's not the Treaty of Paris. Before the Treaty of Paris, we have what we call in Eastern Canada les traités de paix et d'amitié, treaties of peace and friendship treaties. So that shows right there, we never gave a piece of land, okay, through a treaty in Eastern Canada. So it's all non-conceded land, okay? So for sure, that treaty, the Friendship Treaty of 1552, okay, it encompassed Acadia, Port Royal in 1605, relation between 1625. Okay. There's many nations, many groups were touched by this treaty, but they didn't know peace treaty. Because the peace treaty, what happened, why in 1752 they made the peace treaty, is that because the Mi'kmaq declared war on Britain, on the British Empire. And the British were having a lot of trouble in the United States because of the War of Independence, okay? So they were stuck there a bit, so they wanted to try to get out of there. So the Treaty of 1752, like I was saying, it was the war with the lobster and the burning of the lobster shacks, factories. That's all because of 1752, like I was saying to the gentleman. Okay, and now we go to the Treaty of Paris of 1763. That's very interesting, the Treaty of Paris. When they did sign the Treaty of Paris, it gave the Acadian people to come back and establish themselves in Nova Scotia, but not in Nova Scotia, in Cape Breton, on an island. They wanted to keep their eye on them, okay? Because they were too friendly with the Mi'kmaq people, and they were too much intertwined in marriages and relationship and family under the same umbrella. Yeah, the English were very scared of that, but they were using our people as translator because we spoke Mi'kmaq, English, French, and we also spoke the Basque, which is Spanish. We spoke all those languages, my ancestors. Now, they used us as interprets, but they didn't trust us. They kept a good eye on us, kept us locked up at night, and always had somebody beside us when we did translate, you know. So for sure, the Treaty of Bretta stopped something that was very important. It stopped the 7-Year War, what we call the French and Indian War. It stopped there.
Can I ask another question?
We?
So if people are intermarried, like 'cause you were saying that the men were marrying the wives of the Mi'kmaq people, which side would those people, like what side would you be on? Like in the end, like when they were the white people being integrated more into like the society of the Mi'kmaq people, or were the girls that were being married to the white men like more moved into the?
You mean the whites marrying Africans?
No, like you were saying originally that I thought I might have misunderstood that when they first came, they were saying they asked the chief if they could marry their daughters.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And he said yes. So when all of this is happening, like there's not many generations that have gone by. So are the white men more integrated into the society of the Mi'kmaq people at this point, or are the girls being removed and they're more now?
No, they were
white?
Integrated. Okay, and there was new men coming.
Yeah.
Okay, but it did cause a problem, especially in my village and to us. We have developed, because of marriage too close,
Yeah.
we call consanguinité. Even in my family, we have a lot of that. We're marrying way too close.
Oh, okay.
Because we did not marry English, we did not marry Protestant, and we only married First Nation and French. But you take a small community, you don't have that much new people coming in.
Yeah.
Kept marrying, and having children, you're going to have the problem of consanguinity. You know, like my brother married, she's my sister-in-law, but she's my second cousin.
Okay.
He married her, and he got what you call the Pope at that time in Rome. You get a dispense, cost him $15, okay, a piece of paper. So you marry your second cousin, but they only have one child, and he looks like a man. He looks very good, but he has a mind of what? 15? A 15-year-old. Thinks like a 15-year-old. He's in his 50s. So you have a lot of that. So we had to be careful. It was good and not so good, you know. Another thing that happened, just to give you an idea, when the French married an Indian, or what we call First Nation, 9 months after the baby, we did not call him half-breed, and we did not call him Métis. He was our family.
Right.
But when the War of Independence, and the British said to the African people, if you fight with us, I'll give you 3 papers, as 3 men, 3 women, 3 children, and we'll take you to Nova Scotia, and we'll give you housing and land, which they did. They had deported now the Acadians. The men stayed there to take care of the dams. They didn't know how to operate the dams. And all those men that stayed there did not have no woman, and you could not marry an English woman or a Protestant woman. Now, who did the Acadians marry? They married black women, okay? And they intermarried with the daughter, the men, the woman came, they had daughters. The Acadian men married one of the daughters.
Right.
They had the first baby. Did they call them Métis or half-breeds? No. I remember the way they called them. They were a part of my blood. They called them mulattoes. Okay? The color of their skin, the hair was a little more curly, so they were called mulattoes. It was like an insult. They're not mulattoes, they're part of our family. You know, you can't call them names like that. Or Métis, yeah, Métis, okay, mix. Half-breed, I have a little bit of trouble with that. But Métis, I don't have trouble with that. They could call me Métis, I don't mind that. But it's very important because the Treaty of Paris, what it did, stopping the 7-year war. If you ever go on the, it's hard to find, but it's in the Facebook and in the search engine. It's called the King's Letter, the letter of the king. He says, the letter says, tous les sauvages, any savage that marries a Frenchman and takes the faith, the Catholic faith, would become a citizen, okay, of France. And any woman that married a Frenchman would be under the protection of the King of France. So me, I'm allowed to have a Canadian passport because I'm a sauvage, okay? And my ancestors did marry Frenchmen. That's why I'm a Métis. So I would be allowed a French passport. They refused. Because no, it was only after 1663 that the king, no, he signed it before. He signed it when they first came to establish himself in Acadia. And that's still in court anyway against the French government, for sure. So for sure, especially when they moved all the Acadians in Cape Breton, it was very sad for them because they wanted back their original land, which it was all taken. Like my people, where my ancestors come from, they come from Miʻkmaq, Nova Scotia, which is part of Brador, on the Brador Lake. We couldn't go back there. My ancestors couldn't go back there. It was given to the German. Today they call it Lunenburg. That's why they built the Blue Nose, the ship.
Oh.
So this land doesn't, you can't take it away from the land that was given to them, which was our land. But it's Treaty of Paris, okay, this one. Then we go to 1867, the Royal Proclamation of 1867. The 1st of July was signing, the four provinces signing for the Constitution of Canada. We know from 1867 to 1876 they signed the Indian Act. But the reserves, okay, were in progress, okay. Now, in Canada, they have 70 treaties, recognized treaties. And they have land claims, but they have 70 treaties that they recognize. Doesn't mean they respect them. If they recognize them, doesn't mean that they want to respect them. And the government of Canada recognized 7 historic treaties in Canada signed between 1701 and 1923. These treaties include treaties of peace, neutrality, but the 11 treaties you see at the bottom, okay, over here, these 11 treaties is all conceded land. And these treaties, they, I think we were starting.
What treaty is Ontario?
Pardon?
What treaty is Ontario the number?
I can't hear the.
What treaty is Ontario the number?
Ontario?
Yeah. Treaty.
You have 46 treaties in Ontario.
4 to 6
We'll get
treaties
to
in
that.
Ontario. Oh,
Okay,
okay.
and I'll tell you the treaties you're protected under, and the First Nation is protected under the Douglas and the Robinson Treaty. Yeah.
I'm
But-
used to Alberta and the Saskatchewan because I'm from Saskatchewan, from Cree, and it's treaty, I believe, 10, so we're used to like 2 or 3 maybe, I believe. So I'm just curious.
Okay, we're getting to that. See the 70 treaties, okay? The number of treaties, okay, Post-Confederation Treaties are a series of 11 treaties signed between the First Nation, one of the 3 groups of Indigenous people in Canada, and the resigning monarchy of Canada, Victoria, Edward VII, and George V, from 1871 to 1921. Okay, they were very rushing to sign these treaties, okay? Especially the 11 treaties, and then we get here what we call Canada number treaties, 1 to 11. Okay, okay. To know from where the number treaty starts and ends, okay? The number treaties were a series of 11 treaties between the Crown and the First Nation. From 1871 to 1921, the number treaties covered the area between Lake of the Woods, Northern Ontario, Southern Manitoba, Rocky Mountains, British Columbia, and interior plains of Alberta to the Beaufort Sea, north of the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. That's what the 11 treaties, and this is all considered land. You've got them, gadgets, whatever. Okay, now, could anyone here tell me how many reserves do we have in Canada?
I know. But how many reserves?
Treaties in Canada, we have 2,267 treaties, reserves.
Reserves.
Wow.
2,000, how much? 2,000?
2,267. Now, if you look approximately, how much does it give these reserve in land? 2.6 million hectares, okay? The decimal average of all the land of Canada is 0.2% of the total land area of Canada. 0.2 is not much, not even 1%. That belongs to the First Nation, to those 2,267 reserves.
So Indigenous people own the reserves. Is that right? Like in the sense,
Well,
like, does the government like?
And a lot of the land, some of them they own,
Okay,
but some of them it's a lot of Crown land.
but they're allowed to be on it.
Well, they're allowed, yes, like the Atikamekw in Quebec, they're all on Crown land, they don't own them. Now, if the government, what happens there is that it's very crucial, as you see, as I come along and tell you what happens to them by living on a reserve, okay? Tax and treaty, okay? Sometimes we get a lot of people who say, hey, you're lucky, you're an Indian, you don't pay taxes. It's not hard to pay all my taxes. Natives, they paid a big price not to pay taxes. You cannot be a Canadian citizen if you don't pay taxes. And this is right here. In general, Indigenous people in Canada are required to pay taxes on the same basis of other people. The only way we don't pay taxes is that if we're under the Indian Act of the Section 87 of the Indian Act. But you have to live on the reserve, you have to work on the reserve, and the company you work for must be on the reserve.
Oh, you must
Taxes.
be kidding me. That's the only way you don't pay taxes?
Okay? Now, 50% of the First Nation live on reserve, 50% live off reserve. The population of the census of 2011, about, the last time I read, must be more now, were about 1,400,000. Inuit, Métis, and First Nation throughout Canada. Okay? It says here, whereas Native Americans gained U.S. citizenship in 1924. So the U.S. citizens, Indians in the U.S. only gained citizenship in the United States in 1924. In Canada, status Indian were not legally Canadians. That's why you pay tax. Now you get a foreigner that comes here and is protected under refugee, he's a refugee,
Yeah.
he don't pay tax, and he can't vote. Me, as a young man, I remember stories before I was born, and I remember my story when I was born. My dad was Métis. For him to join the Second World War, he had to prove that he was a Canadian, a British, no, an European 100%. So what he did, he had friends which were Irish, so he got papers signed by the Irish in Chatham, and he became an Irishman. And he joined the army to go to war because he had 6 children. He didn't have to. He went as a volunteer because he was only earning about $8 a month. With 6 children, he couldn't live. So by joining the army and becoming a volunteer, my mother got $80 a month.
Oh, wow.
She was a millionaire. At that time, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he went to the war for 5 years. But when he came back, what he did to those people, you think that man is straight in the head? He's an animal. Sorry to say, my father was an animal. I was born in 47. It was terrible. You can't train a person 5 years to kill someone, send them to kill the people, and then come back, alcoholic, abusive, dangerous. That's what's my father. I don't hold it against him. Maybe I would have been worse, I don't know. It was no help, no government help. Today they have all these traumas, they go to war, they come back, they're all, you know, cracked in the head, you know.
They
But-
get all, so,
I don't know the words they use.
He like
That was what we did.
Yeah.
My mother was treated terrible. She had 6 children. They came during the night, breaking the windows in the house. They came with a big bag of salt and salted down her well. And used to tell her in the Shack language, toi, maudit ta way, va ton bec à pas sapin avec tes papous. It was terrible. You know?
And
That
this was
means
just
you friggin'
because,
squawk. Go
Yeah.
back to where you come from with your brats. In the Shack language, you know? So you had to live with things like that. But ancestry is gone. That you cannot use that today, and you can't carry that on your back till you die. No, you can't do that. So tax exemption, I think is terrible. And First Nations, you cannot sit there and wait for your check. I remember when I was living on the reserve in Marysville, the families were getting 2 checks a month, but the same amount, they weren't getting more. They used to cut the check in 2 so that they would have a check in the first of the month and the last of the month so the children could eat. When they get the money, they drank it. They spent it, you know. So the kids, no shoes to go to school, no clothes, the money was gone, and no help. No help. That was it. You spend that money, you're caught. So, you know, I felt bad, you know, what's going on, you know. So sometimes they say that, you know, it's like you see, legally Canadians, nor could they vote in national election until 1960. So I remember my father, he was a full-blooded Irishman. And he used to come and get my father to vote. He was a liberal, he voted liberal, a flash of whiskey, eh? And my mom and my grandmother was in the window. I said, Mom, grandmother, why don't you vote? Oh, no, women don't vote. They weren't allowed to vote. So my father voted, came back drunk, he was an alcoholic. And good thing they only had elections every so many years. Didn't have that every month. Bad shape, very bad shape.
But Archie, there are some reserves that are that do pay tax, and they run a lot smoother
Yeah,
They're
Métis.
a richer sort of. in a
Today,
richer-
it's, but they have taxation on the reserves, like Ganawagi. They have taxation. Wendake, they have taxation. It works very good, and the houses are nice, the streets, they have urbanists, and everything is great.
Can they work
So-
off the reserve then?
Eh?
Can they work off the reserve?
Yeah, you work
Okay.
off the reserve, you can work off the reserve as much as you want,
So-
because when I worked as a police officer, some officers were First Nation, and they had to pay taxes like me.
So, but is it the reserve that's taxing the people, or is it the government that's taxing the people and giving money back to the reserve? Out of curiosity, on those reserves where people are getting taxed, is it like the council that's taxing the people on the reserves?
Yeah.
Or is it the government that's taxing the people to get the money back?
No, not the government, it's be their own people.
Okay, so it's
They
like
have
they
to be
can-
trained in that.
Okay, so then
Okay,
they,
and a lot of them, they're not trained, they don't know. Like I had a lady, she was a lawyer, Madame Saint-Ange, she was with the Montagnac, and she says, Archie, and she was crying. She says they said they would beat me up. I said, what's going on? And she said, well, I checked the books, and it's missing $20 million. So she went to the chiefs and the councillors, says, where is the 20 million? They said, shut your mouth. If you don't shut your mouth, we're going to shut your mouth for you. So she,
yeah.
lady knows,
Yeah.
got scared, eh? So, and then they finally went and they did an investigation. And you know what the council said to the government? It's not our fault that the 20 million is gone. It's your fault. So the government asked him, why is it our fault? We gave you the 20 million to administer your reserve. Well, he says, you didn't show us how to administer it. So they were at the casino all day, playing the machines.
But it's true, like it's true, if you're not allowing people to have their lives in a way that they know how to run it, and you're forcing a system on them, and then you don't teach them
Yeah, they're not
how to
educated
use
in-
the system,
The
how do you
pro-
expect people to
The problem,
succeed?
the money is given and they are not accountable for it. This is the problem. Even in the conceded land, and the First Nation are protected also because you hunt together, you fish together, and this is what Robinson did, okay, because he said protected Aboriginal people rights to hunt and fish in ceded territories. A peaceful relation between settlers and Aboriginal communities resulted. Douglas was the primary agent for treaty making in Ontario. Now, you have one big problem in Ontario. It was what? Oakville, with the land claims. See, land claims are not really used here in the East. Most in Alberta, Saskatchewan, when you want to make your reserve bigger, okay? You can apply for land claims. But here in the East, they don't. They have lots of land, you know, for them, for their use, you know. So they're not going to think. The Robinson Huron Treaty, we call the Robinson Huron Treaty, is very important to all the members of the territory. The treaty is a government to government document that was signed between First Nation leaders and the British Crown. The treaty was to establish a relationship between First Nation and Europeans on the basis of the respect of one another. That's very good, because we live more in harmony than you always want to live in war and fight over land and fight over that. So these treaties really protect you in Ontario, I find. They're good treaties. Quebec. Quebec only have 2 treaties. There wasn't very many treaties in Quebec. Intermarriage stopped it. Also, intermarriage can stop a lot of things because there's no squabble, you know, they all live together and so on. So there was a lot of métisage in Quebec. A lot of them were mixed. in Quebec also. And so that's why you don't see these treaties, many treaties. And Ontario, why they had all these treaties? Because even so, as there's a lot of Métis in Ontario too, especially the northern part of Sault Ste. Marie. And you had a little fella that was a chum of Champlain that really mixed with the Anishinaabe, was called Brûlé. Etienne Brûlé. He was he liked he married, and also Cindy Collet. There was different French people that came over to eastern, especially eastern Ontario, which mixed and made the Métis people of Ontario. But Quebec, the biggest treaty that was signed in Quebec was 1701, August 4th, was called La Grande Paix de Montréal. 39 chiefs came down. Jesse Flesch was not involved with that, but the Jesuit, they did 4 years, they went around and convinced all these chiefs to come to Montreal and Pointe-à-Carrière to sign the Great Peace. What did they want to stop? They wanted to stop the Beaver War. Because right there they had the Beaver War, they could not go west no more. The war was dead. So by signing the 39 treaties, that's it. No more hostilities. And then they started to make all these trading posts. It really got the ball rolling. Dollard des Ormeaux, forget him. He didn't. He got killed near Point Fortune there. He wasn't very popular, but he became a hero because he had about 39 Hurons with him, and he had about maybe 20 soldiers. And when he went up the Chute Blondeau, he met 800 First Nations who were waiting for him at the park there, Travelers Park, Voyageurs Park. And they fought for a whole week. They were still good, because they had these arquebusiers with the little thing with the smoke there, a little string. They gave them a very good hammering until what history says, they lit a barrel of black powder and they threw it and hit a branch and came back and they killed it all. So that's how they lost the war. And but he became a hero, Dollard des Ormeaux, because Montreal, or what we call Ville Marie or Hochelaga, was the last time that was ever invaded by a First Nation. No more invasion. The last treaty that was signed in Quebec was signed in 1975 with the Northern Crees, with the Bay James. They signed a treaty of $35 billion to the Cree Nation over 35 years. The Atikamekw and the Montagnais got sweet nothing, nothing for the war. I know, I worked with them, and it was the fight at that time, it was unbelievable. But the Inuits, they got protected because they changed the direction of the water on the Kenya-Quisco River. Before the water went east, now it goes west. And they created in Nunavik what we call the Miʻkmaq, and they really did use the money for a good purpose. They have the largest aeroplane company, small aircraft in the world. With First Air and Aimid Air and all these planes. So they really did and served the 14 communities of Northern Quebec. One thing I was surprised when I was there, I did 17 years, I worked with them as a professional guide, and I worked for the Miʻkmaq with the biologists for the fish and the games and the caribou and all that. And it was funny, if you marry an Inuit woman, I get a check. And if an Inuit woman marry a white man, he gets a check.
But the
So
woman
she
doesn't.
becomes part of the agreement. And the one thing that they have there, and I was surprised, in their treaty, you cannot, you know what a corrigan is? Corrigan? It's a whitefish. Nobody is allowed to fish those except us. Me, they give me the right because it was First Nation, but then if a white man catches a paragon, he has to release it. Because it's the food of the Inuit people, and it's all their food. Now, after that. Okay, historical treaty signed. For me,
I just want to take you, sorry, I have to go back to work.
okay, merci. For me, it's pretty well finished. Now is the question period. If you have any questions, I can answer Pierrette also, and answer your questions. Something that we didn't touch or something that we did touch. It's a big document. Treaties are big document, and I'm really, flying a little bit over the top, because if you go right in there, there's a lot more interesting topics with the treaties in Canada. I think it's very nice, especially like I was saying about reconciliation. I think it's possible. I think before you can reconcile with somebody, the person has to agree and admit what they've done. I seen in my village frozen babies being buried. I seen that. Now that we used to speak, we used to tell between one another what they did, but we didn't have no proof. Now we have proof. Now they have to excuse themselves. And I'm very ungrateful to the Pope for not approving to excuse themselves. And I cannot imagine. I know I lived it, I was in a convent, I know. So many people that did this, there was no whistleblowers. No, I didn't hear one whistleblower or heard somebody saying something, what was going on. So how can you brainwash all people like that? It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And they're not saying a word. I couldn't believe it myself. Like, I can understand what happened to me, I shut my mouth. Because if I talked at home, I would have got it. A bottle, I didn't want, 2 beatings a day was enough. I didn't want a third one, somebody smart. But like I say, it's something that as soon that the government and the people that did this, the clergy, the priests, the nuns, as soon as they admit it, I think, they used to say one time, I didn't believe it too much when I was young, he says, tell the truth, you're half pardoned. Sometimes I told the truth and I got a full-fledged, and I should have shut my mouth, would have got me.
That's the right thing.
So, avez-vous des questions?
It was really interesting. Like, I just moved here from Alberta, so like I'm still learning like building Mi'kmaq and Métis. We have actually out in Calgary, there's a highway and it's called Métis Trail, and a lot of people say Métis, and I'm like, so like it's just like that correction and whatnot, and like, I mean, for me in Alberta, but we used to hunt in Saskatchewan, Alberta, prairie land, buffalo, and like as you were saying earlier, like what can we do, or like, because they're not going to do anything, they're not going to say anything, they're not going to own up to it, and like, I think that in teachings in Alberta, and I think it's in a book, I forgot what the name was called, but for buffalo, I'm not sure what you guys hunted out here, I'm not sure if buffalo is hunted out here. But for buffalo on prairie lands, buffalo is our main source. So we like our clothing, our shelter, our food, our tools, our everything. So then we see that buffalo as education. So education is our new buffalo. Education will help because it gives us shelter, it gives us food and whatnot. So like, I don't know if you guys have a saying like that, or like what you guys hunted. That'd be interesting to see or hear, but not. So I don't know, I just wanted to add in my background as well, and that I'm really amazing.
Donc ici, Archie, what, like in our region, what would you hunt normally?
In this region,
Yeah.
today,
Well, today and you know, not so far back, in not so distant past.
I remember stories from New Brunswick. We hunted caribou.
Caribou, oh, okay.
Ontario, hunted caribou. We call it woodland caribou. And also moose were hunted here. Elk, we had elks at that time. And prior, I couldn't tell you the year that we hunted in the St. Lawrence River, we hunted polar bears.
Oh, wow.
At that time. But as the melting of the ice, everything moves northward. Right now you have areas where you fish lobsters. They didn't have lobster this far north. Now they're having lobsters more and less to the south because the melting of the caps, we cannot stop that. It's impossible because it's been melting for centuries. The only problem we have is that because our activities, we have to reduce our activities because we're making the caps melt too fast and we cannot adjust for the climate change and all that. Pierrette told me something, I nearly fell off my chair yesterday. She says, the effort that Canada makes in 1 year, China destroys it in 1 day. 1 day. So all the effort we do in 1 year, in 1 day, China, they built 1 airport a week. Open.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Can't keep up. What do the flags represent?
The red one,
Why? Because it's
that's the Grand Council flag of the Mi'kmaq people. And when they made the flag, the Red Cross is, we accept Christianity. The white, the pureness of our word. The sun, that's not a star, that's the sun. And with the moon, is that the Jesuit priest told us that the devil, which we did not believe in the devil, is like a thief, and he'll come in the wigwams and steal us during the night. And something that Hollywood wasn't off too much. Native couldn't fight. An enemy that he could not see. Understand? So by not being able to see the devil, they took a little bit of the sun, a little bit of the moon, and if he ever came in the wigwam, he was going to get one hell of a beating. Can't get him. So that's why that flag was introduced to the Grand Council flag of the Mi'kmaq people. And here is the 7 territories of our people, territories that we represent in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, PEI, there's the Netherlands Islands, Quebec, Gaspé, and part of Maine that we part of the Mi'kmaq territory.
Pierrette and Archie brought a whole lot of artifacts as well, so if you have time, you can take a look. You should play,
Yeah.
Play,
I just want to show you, I don't know if they have that out west,
No, they don't know. I don't think, I haven't seen that
the
before.
jar.
Nope.
This was brought over by the voyageur,
Uh-huh.
okay? And it was a trade item that was invented in Siberia, they made them from wood. And then the Europeans made them, instrument music is the oldest music instrument here in the Americas. They put them into wooden boxes. This one comes from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
We dropped it in the water, we either tied it to a belt, up to it floated, because we didn't have roads we had. So it was used for dancing. You grab one arm, swing this way, or swing that way, and it was put on the teeth, not on the lips. Put on the lips, you want to cut your lips. Okay, and on the teeth, and you play with your tongue and your breath. Okay, with your tongue, and you'll see the sound like I make. Okay, with my breath now. And a lot of First Nation, you would see them wearing that in their, you know, like this. This is a plume they call. It's made from silver. And I have another one from the Hudson Bay Company. They were given to chiefs and they were given to First Nation, and it wasn't a gift; it was money. Okay, and each one has a beaver on it. The reason it has a beaver because it was the beaver help was the what s'appelle? La peau de castor, c'était
Achat d'échange.
it was achat d'échange from that.
That's how they trade with stuff, they.
It was money.
The value.
Yeah.
So, in other words, just to give you an idea, if that beaver skin was worth $1.50, all these skins there, these furs, had to be negotiated to $1.50 because he was the commanding force. Okay? Maybe over here, Pierre, just show I have several ones from the Hudson Bay Company. See the same right here. Some were made from gold, silver, some were made from copper, cheap metals, and they're all made in Montreal, Albany, New York. Some were made in Detroit. They were all made all over the place. And now there was a company from the United States. We call them the Rocky Mountain Fur Trading Company. They were out from the Mississippi River, and they came up and they were competing against the Hudson Bay Company. But the Northwest, the Scottish were moved right in and spending the whole winter with the First Nation. They couldn't be touched. But what they did in the Northwest, they continued trading, and the Rocky Mountain, because the Hudson Bay Company took the beaver skin as their primary money, okay, everything comes brought to that. They used elk skin, and they said that's going to be our exchange, but we won't put it at $1.50, we'll put $1.20. They undercut Hudson Bay Company, and then they made a big dollar with 2 elks. And you know what they call that dollar? And we still use the same term. We're still using it. They call it a buck. That's where the buck comes from. Now, the blue and the beaver is still on our Canadian money. Which one?
Oh, les 5 sous.
5 cents. 5 cents is a beaver, is a blue. Or they call it
a nickel.
A nickel.
Nickel, they call it the nickel. The only time that they took the beaver off, remember what year? The year of the Second World War, when they did the V for victory. That was the only year. Okay? And then they started reducing the coins because they needed more copper to build tanks and guns and bullets and so on and so forth.
Merci beaucoup.
Bienvenue, ça me fait plaisir.
Yes.